Welcome back to the Energetically You podcast, where we talk about healthy habits, abundant mindset, and optimal wellness. I'm your host, Megan Swan, creator of the Sustainable Integrated Wellness Approach. At 30, I sold everything and went on my own Eat, Pray, Love journey. Now at 41, I'm still on my first stop here in Mexico, loving life and feeling more energetic than ever before. Today, I'm chatting with my business coach, Sabrina Philipp. She hasn't always been the CEO of a 30-person company with students and clients in nearly every country on earth, with a husband who hops with her from country to country as her COO, and a multi-million-dollar business owner that she built from the ground up. When she started out, she was a college dropout with $800 in her pocket and a one-way plane ticket to Bali. She was committed to make it on her own. Little did she know that single decision would change her life forever. Today, you can find her cooking up new cocktails and programs in Edinburgh, Scotland, with her Aussie husband, Paul, and their golden doodle, Bonnie. This podcast is for ambitious women who are looking to level up their energy so that they feel happier and more productive throughout their day. Inside, we are going to talk about ways to truly tune into our minds and bodies to feel abundant mindset through and through. As Sabrina will tell us, it is really an energy, a feeling more than anything else. So let's dive in. Welcome to Energetically You. I'm here today with my business coach, Sabrina Philipp. Hi, Sabrina. How are you today?
Hey, Megan. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I am so thrilled that you agreed to be on the podcast. I am wanting to pick your brain a little bit about your journey to be so abundant in terms of abundant energy and abundant mindset in your life and business. Can you think back, or do you have it well established, sort of the catalyst or the season of your life where you really felt a shift into abundance?
Definitely. And I think that there are those kind of like big instant shift moments where you see it. And then I think also that there are those kind of smaller moments where that seed is planted and maybe you did shift into abundance and didn't necessarily recognize it or acknowledge it in that way. So for me, something I talk about a lot was my experience living in an ashram when I was 19. And I've never identified it as, shifting to abundance, but ultimately that was when I did physically feel at least the most energetically abundant, just because of the vegetarian diet that I was eating twice a day and meditating twice a day and doing yoga twice a day. So that was such a powerful time for me. And then I think many of us think of abundance in terms of, financial wealth. And I really started to see that shift more so when I started my online business. However, I do think that there is a connection between the shifts that you make energetically and physically and spiritually, and how that will then later translate into financially.
Okay. Well, could you define what does abundance mean to you?
To me, abundance is a feeling, and it's the feeling and belief that there's always more than enough. So that could be more than enough time. That could be more than enough boyfriends. That could be more than enough money, more than enough handbags, whatever that might be for you. It's just this feeling of more than enough. And so for me, one of the reasons why I really felt that at the ashram specifically is just because there was such a powerful container for my life and my structure and my day that it was really easy to find a lot of freedom within that, which I think that sometimes we hear, structure, container, and we think it's the exact opposite. But for me, I really believe that you can find a lot of freedom in that. and in the, the health that you cultivate there.
Amazing. Can you pinpoint other sort of stepping stones in your life? Like I can see how it would have been sort of natural to be, in a sense, in a state of more abundance in the ashram, but then, fast forward to real life and, real life in terms of so many stresses that we're always managing. How did you find it outside of the ashram?
That's a great question. So I remember when I was about to leave the ashram, I went to one of my teachers and I basically told him something along the lines of, I'm scared, I'm freaked out. And he told me that yoga was not meant to be practiced in the ashram, but out in the real world, right? The real world being everything outside of the ashram, essentially. And so that's a lesson that I've always tried to carry with me. And I think that it is really helpful when it comes to conversations about health and wellness and abundance and mindset of, you can go to an awesome 10-day meditation retreat and, be silent, great, amazing. But you don't necessarily need to carry exactly that with you in the real world, but you can carry some sort of form or function of that. So maybe you're not quietly sitting through your entire life, but maybe you can, tune into a quick meditation once or twice a day. And that can be enough to manage those everyday real world stresses. So for me, definitely, I started to notice a lot of those, quote unquote, real world stresses as I got into a relationship and started a business and moved abroad and was away from my family. And so then it just becomes about how can I manage that and get support. And so, you've been my health and wellness coach, and that has been so powerful just to have that kind of grounding in that process. But I guess what I want to say is, it doesn't need to look exactly like the ashram or exactly like what you're reading in a blog to still be really meaningful and transformational.
Amazing. So can you give us some specific practices that, well, one that maybe you took directly from the ashram, but two that you have developed over the years that maybe don't really have anything to do with yoga per se?
Yeah, definitely. So I think for me, one of the biggest things that stuck with me since the ashram is a lot of the chanting and prayers. So that is still something that I do all the time. And I think for me, it's really great just because it immediately shifts my thinking. So if I am going into a meditation or a class or a yoga practice, or even just getting on an airplane, if I can do that chant or that prayer, that mantra, then for me, it really helps me cool down and just calm down energetically really quickly, because it's so ingrained in you that, okay, we're going to do this now, this chant, because after that, we're going to go do practice, or we're going to do this one now, and then we're going to go to bed, or we're going to do this one, and then we're going to go travel. So I think it's just a really great kind of mental reset. So that's something that I've definitely carried with me a lot. And then after kind of like what I've picked up over the years, I think that actually, I guess a little bit from the ashram, but not exactly the way they would do it. I don't like to meditate silently all the time. I would rather meditate on like a Krishna Das song or something like that. So even just, quick 8-10 minute meditations with the backdrop of a Krishna Das song or, some sort of kirtan song is something that I've always been doing. They never really taught it that way at the ashram, but, I took what worked for me and I just kept going.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's really important with so many of these practices. It has to be something that works for you, that integrates and makes sense for you, resonates specifically to your situation, so that you keep it up. Because I'm guessing that it's for you, it's a daily practice, or certainly like something you incorporate into your week so that you always feel abundant.
Yeah, definitely.
So what, can you describe a little bit how you physically feel different when you feel like you're in abundance, and are you very aware that when you shift out of it?
Definitely. And I think that so much of the conversation of like mindset and abundance is, we have to kind of pair that or couple that with a conversation on taking action. So if you kind of shift energetically and you're not feeling abundant and you're, feeling very overwhelmed and very scarce and just limited resources, limited time, limited everything, you will stop taking good, healthy, massive action for yourself. So maybe you might, default to more quick fast food as opposed to grabbing a healthy snack at home. Or maybe you are more likely to compromise your sleep or compromise bedtime routine or mindset or journaling or whatever, because you're not in that energetic state of abundance. So I think that just kind of mind body connection that happens so quickly of, because I feel good, I will take good action, or because I don't feel good, I will not take good action for myself, is really something for all of us just to identify. So I can definitely see when I'm feeling overwhelmed that I'm more likely to order delivery. I'm more likely to have, a bad sleep pattern. So those are just things for me to pay attention to, not because I am feeling good, but because I want to feel good. I prioritize those things.
Awesome. So I know that, I've learned from you and from other coaches and in my own yoga practice and all these other things that oftentimes we sort of tend to let these practices be less consistent when we feel good. Can you tell us a story about how it became, part of who you are, and very clear, like how committed you were to those practices, knowing that, if you dial them down, when you feel good, ultimately it has a negative impact in the long run?
Mm-hmm. So I think one thing that can be really helpful is, instead of trying to overhaul your entire lifestyle right away, which is definitely something I've tried to do many times, where I'm just like, okay, I'm going to go vegan overnight and I'm only going to wear this type of clothing and I'm going to completely change all the cleaning products in my house and I'm going to do this, 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 and this. It's really difficult to sustain just because you are completely turning over your life overnight, which something like that works in an ashram where you are isolated from your normal day-to-day environment and you're operating within a very specific container and you don't need to worry about kids or partners or school or education or anything like that. That works, but trying to do that on top of everything else that you've got going on is very difficult. So one thing I would say is, instead of constantly trying to overhaul your entire life, start with one or two strategies or lifestyle changes and then make those normal and really integrate them into your life and then stack something else on top. So for me, when I left the ashram and I went back to college and things like that, some of the things that I kept with me were, having more of a plant-based diet. I was, a vegetarian for about a year after that. And then I eventually changed my diet to more meat heavy. Now I'm more plant-based again. But I really stuck very consistently with that. When that was very stable, then I was like, okay, I'm going to, keep doing my yoga once or twice a day. And I was very consistent about that. So the first thing I would say is, don't feel like you need to uphaul your entire life overnight. Just find one thing that you can start with and stick with it. And in terms of sticking with it, what I would say is find a way to make it really positive for you, as opposed to feeling like it's something that you have to do, but actually something that you want to do. So it's not, I have to exercise and do yoga because I'm trying to lose weight. It's, I want to do yoga because I get to stretch out my body and I feel really good and I have so much more energy and I just feel better when I do it. So if you do try to introduce lifestyle changes, really make it about why you want to have that change versus how that's something that you have to do, because I think that's when a lot of people start to rebel.
I love that. Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey to journaling? Because that's definitely something that you've instilled in me, and for me personally, that I always have to remind myself to do even when I'm feeling great. But it's such a powerful exercise. Where did you start doing that?
Definitely such a powerful exercise. For me, that was something that was kind of first introduced to me at the ashram in the form of a spiritual diary. So what you would basically do every day is you would note, how many hours of meditation did you do? How many hours of karma yoga? How many hours of physical practice, japa mala, all of these different things. And it's part of the Shivananda lineage. And so that was how it was first introduced to me, this idea of a spiritual diary. It was less self-inquisitive and more just kind of like, here is exactly what I did, with the idea being of really having that presence and that focus on sadhana, spiritual practice and on spiritual study. So that was how it was first introduced to me. And then when I started my business, I was more so introduced to this concept of mindset, which I think in a lot of ways is very similar to what was taught at the ashram, but different language. And that's when I got into journaling. And so I remember when I started my business, I would keep 2 journals with me at all times, one to really just kind of process and ask myself those bigger questions. And then another one that was specifically a gratitude journal. And that was so huge for me. I think really just to shape my mindset and be available to have that big business success.
Awesome. Can you describe or define how you differentiate mindset versus just like a point of view or a perspective?
Well, I think in many ways they're kind of the same thing. So I think that your mindset is a belief system that you have. And so I think that when we talk about mindset work, that's the process or the practice of shifting and shaping your mindset to have a new belief system that is supportive and empowering of what you ultimately desire. But at the end of the day, everybody has a mindset. It's just that most people have an unconscious mindset where they have a belief system that was instilled in them by friends, family, parents, society, whatever that might be. And they just think, okay, well, this is how life works, without understanding that they actually have so much power and ability to shape their mindset or to shape their belief system, which will then influence their actions, which will ultimately determine their results.
Right. Okay. So now can you tell us a little bit about how, or maybe when was it from the very beginning of getting traction in your business? Did you leverage this spirituality, this focus and mindset to be so successful?
Yeah. So I think that for me, my spirituality definitely kind of gives me the framework for how I get to think about how life works. So I really believe that I get to ultimately control anything that I want, and I get to use my willpower and my thoughts to have an experience that I want to have. And I feel pretty good at detaching myself from the outcome and the how, and just trusting that it's all going to work out perfectly and it's all going to happen. So I have a lot of faith there. I remember when I first started my business, the first ever live challenge that I did was called the Yoga of Business Challenge. And I talked about the 4 passive yoga, Karma, Bhakti, Raja, Jnana, and how that applied to your kind of style of business and how you should be showing up. So that was the first ever challenge that I did. And I think even now, I still introduce that to my clients through the work that I do in my high level masterminds. I had my 6-month AbundantAF mastermind, which is about to finish. And I also have my AbundantAF course, which just started 2 weeks ago. And that runs once a year. So I still find ways to bring in that spirituality specifically to people who do want to work on mindset and do want to have, I think, that kind of greater connection to the universe.
Yeah, I mean, I think like one of the coolest things about you is that you've trademarked AbundantAF as a phrase.
Yeah.
I think it says a lot. But have you, or do you find that it's essential? I mean, with almost all of your high level coaching, you know, even as you get to the higher levels, you still need support in feeling abundant or in finding abundance?
Well, I think that we definitely need mindset support. We definitely need like energetic support, and just to be really held in, you know, in a very sustainable container, whether that looks like business coaching, mindset coaching, life coaching, therapy, however that looks. I think that definitely everyone needs to be supported and held in some sort of way, especially when you are holding massive space for others. So a lot of my clients in those higher level programs do typically have dozens, if not hundreds of clients. So they need to be just as supported as they're supporting others. So I think that in terms of like, what do they need more of? Do they really need more business coaching, or do they really need more mindset coaching? Truthfully, I think they need more mindset work and, you know, more of that energetic work of feeling abundant, because when you're in that state, I think the strategy and the massive action naturally follows.
Yeah. So do you feel like that's maybe like the number one thing people come to you for, or do they hear more of the numbers of your success and are attracted to that, or it depends on the client?
I think it depends on the client. I think that what is really true is people are really intrigued by approach. So of course, like, results are really great, but then it's like, well, how did you do that? So you could go hire another coach to make 7 figures, but if their approach is all about hustle, 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 you wouldn't probably hire that coach. But then for me, a lot of my clients want to make more while working less. So if that's the approach that you want, then I'm a great coach to go ahead and hire. So like, yes, the results are definitely the thing that they're looking for. And also I think the how is super key. So I talk about my business framework, intentional, manageable, profitable. And I think that manageable piece is so key for a lot of people investing at that higher level, where they just want to make sure that their business doesn't run away from them, and there are systems in place that are really sustainable and scalable.
Amazing. Okay. Well, I have been following you. I don't know if you know this part of the story, but since I'm guessing a lot of people got to know you with when you launched the Bali Mastermind, and from there I discovered you. And so I don't know how many years ago that, but I feel like I was following you for at least a year, if not more.
Yeah.
And I think, I just love that story because I resonated with just getting on a plane with with $800. So how has your perspective of money changed since then?
I mean, I think so much. When I moved to Bali, I really didn't have very much saved. I didn't really have too much of a backup plan. And so I really just immediately jumped into, I will do kind of whatever to make money. So I had a job where I made like a list of sororities because the business owner, wanted to reach out to sororities and give them like free planners as part of an affiliate deal. Okay, cool. I wrote Instagram captions. I pinned things on Pinterest. I had someone who paid me $100 to basically organize her brain. She was like, I'm so confused. I don't know what to do. So I basically had to like set up her Google Calendar. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. So I was just willing to do whatever. And I got introduced to this world of, online coaching through Facebook groups, and I was seeing everything. And it became really clear to me that I needed help and I needed information. And so I had already taken such a big bet, a big risk betting on myself moving to Bali. I was like, okay, well, it's time to do that again. So I decided to invest in coaching, and it massively paid off. And I think just being willing to keep investing and keep making big bets has really been huge for me. And then to see, money grow so quickly and to see impact grow so quickly, I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is that it's really important to integrate and normalize that kind of level or layer of wealth. Otherwise, if it doesn't feel integrated, it doesn't feel normal, it doesn't feel safe, that is when you see a lot of people have like a really big month and then fall off the face of the earth for, 3 or 6 months after. And then they have a big month and then they go back to barely scraping by. So really just letting yourself feel safe and supported and letting it be normal that you are in that amount of money, and it is possible for you to generate that level of abundance, I think is one of the biggest lessons I've learned.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about that piece? Like, how do you help your clients get comfortable with that level of abundance?
Definitely. So I think part of that is also just making the journey there really sustainable and manageable. I think sometimes people will, not sleep for several weeks and just really work themselves crazy to have this huge month. And then after they feel really energetically exhausted, they don't want to do anything. And they just kind of let themselves, coast on that money to pay their bills for a while until they need more money. So one thing I work on with my clients is just making those big months really sustainable and predictable. And then also having a plan for what you're going to do after that. So it's not like, okay, I'll stop now. It's like, great, we just had a really big month. Let's go do it again. So having, I think, that safety and stability is one thing that's really key for my clients. I think the other thing is just finding ways to ground those big wins. So whether that is, that big win is going to mean a new house, a new car upgrade, kids going to private ballet lessons, a new handbag, whatever it is, just finding a way to kind of ground that and even create a memento of that experience. I always encourage my clients to journal on anytime they feel like a big shift or a big energetic upgrade or up level, so that anytime they are feeling down, they can reflect back on that and tap back into that feeling.
I love that. Can you tell us a little bit about your concept of micro upgrades?
Definitely. So I think that so often we put on, a pedestal like Chanel bags and Cartier love bracelets and 10K months. And there's just a few things that feel really big and far away and like these kind of status symbols. But what I found is sometimes people will hit those and then they just feel immense, massive guilt, or they didn't even want that in the first place, right? I'll sometimes have clients be like, can I come work with you even if I don't want a Chanel bag? And it's like, of course, right? Like, that's not the point. The point is that you let yourself have nice things. And I think one way we can do that is, instead of constantly having this kind of vision board item or big ticket purchase, is to make consistent and regular micro upgrades in your life so that you do get used to and acclimatize to that level of comfort. So for example, instead of going out and buying a big expensive handbag, maybe this week you decide to buy matching coffee mugs. So instead of having, 100 unmatching ones that are maybe a little old or a little chipped, you get yourself a nice set of matching coffee mugs, or maybe you get yourself a bouquet of flowers, or you get a nice candle or upgrade your working space, whatever that might be. But it's just the idea of making constant micro upgrades so that it just becomes, okay, this is my new normal, right? So it's just my new normal that I always pick up a bouquet of flowers for myself every single week. It's just my new normal that I get organic groceries instead of the discount groceries. And in doing that process, your brain also starts to understand that maybe you need a little bit more money to sustain that budget. But because you're not doing it in that huge jump, it feels a lot more safe, right? So you're turning up the temperature very slowly, acclimatizing, making it your new normal, and you're just shifting that feeling and letting yourself be abundant all the time.
Yes, makes so much sense. So have you done, or can you tell us, you've always pretty much worked from wherever you are, worked remotely. Can you share with us some micro upgrades that you have made to your workspace so that you feel more abundant in terms of your business and where you're working?
Definitely. So I always have crystals next to my workspace, a picture. At the moment, I have a picture of my husband and my dog, and I also have candles. I also have these nice room sprays. The one I'm using at the moment is orange and cinnamon and vanilla, and I'll usually spray that before I'm working. I have these nice coffee mugs that I really like, and these water glasses that have bees on them. Bees are a symbol of abundance. And so throughout the day, if I want a coffee or a water, that's what I'll go ahead and use. I really like the journals that I have and my pens and things like that. So I just, make an effort to make my workspace really nice and a positive place that I want to be. So I also like flowers a lot. So I think, potted plants are a great kind of in between if you don't want to commit to weekly fresh flowers, cut flowers. So orchids just so happen to be my favorite flower. So I have a potted orchid on my desk.
I love orchids.
Yeah, me too.
I love the sort of like drama between, like absolutely nothing, and then all of a sudden it just like rebloom. Mm. So one last topic I wanted to discuss with you. I know, it's a very trendy thing right now to talk about manifesting things such as abundance. Can you tell us a little bit about how you think about that differently, I'd say, than many people spouting the idea that you can just manifest abundance?
Yeah, so I think that abundance is a feeling, so you don't necessarily manifest a feeling, right? You can shift into a feeling at any time. It's always available to you. So I think that's one thing just to go ahead and note. I think the other thing is, a lot of people talk about law of attraction, and I more so talk about law of massive action. So if you want something, you go out and you make it happen. And there's a very specific process for doing that, right? You look at your thoughts, you clear any resistance that you have to it, you get locked in, you get certain, and you take action toward getting that thing. But I think that when it comes to, manifesting abundance, like abundance is ultimately a feeling. So you can shift into that at any state. And it's in that feeling of abundance that you are actually embodying the next level version of yourself who has that specific thing. So if we're talking about manifesting, 10K months, okay, great. Like we can definitely manifest that. But the feeling of abundance is always available to you. It's just about giving yourself permission to feel that now.
Yeah, I think that's such a great phrase, giving yourself permission. So last question, what are some of the biggest blocks that you've come up against sort of over the years that have maybe challenged your abundant mindset?
Definitely. So one thing I'll go ahead and say is typically the block that you are working on right now will be the same block that you're going to have to work on at your next level and your next level after that and your next level. It's just, a different version of the same thing, but it's just challenged at a different level. Or maybe let's say you did have a big month, but then the block comes up of like, oh, well, that wasn't real, right? Like that was a fluke. So our brain finds ways to rationalize away what just happened. So even if we're like, no, I am AbundantAF, I can have whatever I want. It's like, okay, no, but like this was just a mistake. Like it's not going to happen again. So you encounter the same version or a different version of the same block at every level. So I think for me, something that has always come up for me every time I launch a program is just, is anybody going to want this? Nobody's going to sign up. Nobody's going to like this. So that's something that I've always looked at. And then something that has been new that has come up recently is I get very, very, very locked in on my goals, which I think is super key to manifesting, obviously. So I got really locked into something. And then I was like, well, I don't know if I want this right now. Like maybe I'll get this later. And so then I was just playing with the idea of, what does it mean when you manifest something? And then you're like, no, I changed my mind. So just being able to also let go of things and just move on to the next thing without turning it into this big story.
Yeah, that's a good one. So basically giving yourself permission to change your mind, right?
Totally. Yeah.
So any last, thoughts or tidbits you can leave us with for someone who just wants to start feeling, where do they start feeling more abundant?
Definitely. So I think, as I've said a few times, abundance is a feeling, right? Money is a resource. If you think that you're going to feel abundant because you have more money or you have more time or you have more this, that, or the other, like that's not how it works. There are plenty of very happy people crying in Porsches, right? Like they may not feel very abundant. Even if you look at their bank account, they might have all the money in the world in there. So what I would go ahead and suggest is first really shifting into a place of gratitude for everything that is present in your life. And then from there, I think just starting to take some action toward those micro upgrades can be really beneficial and helpful for starting to feel more abundant.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sabrina. I really appreciate your time and everything you shared with us today. And looking forward to working with you on an ongoing basis, of course.
Yes. Thank you so much, Megan. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to Energetically You. I hope that this episode has helped you to tune into your natural energy sources so that you feel more energized and focused throughout your day. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a second to rate and review. Each review helps us to help more ambitious women just like you accomplish their goals. Don't forget to take a screenshot, share it on social, or in your Instagram stories and tag me at Megan Swan Wellness. See you soon.